Welcome to Friday, and this isn't just any Friday. This is a special one. We're going to share the afternoon with John Lewis and the most recent book, Carry On. It's Reflection for a New Generation. And before I get into the body of the work, I'd like to read you just a couple paragraphs of what Gretchen Young, the editor of this book, actually said. And she states, in early 2020, Congressman Lewis agreed to do another book. By then he knew he had little time left, but he decided that preserving his final thoughts on what mattered most to him would help his message live on. So, while pushing through bouts of exhaustion, he carved out precious time for this project. And Carry On, Reflections for a New Generation, was born. During our interviews for this book, he spoke on a wide range of topics, from love and friendship to justice and courage, to his favorite books and art. He reflected on the civil rights movement, the Black Lives Matter protests, and the need for equality. He also spoke of those personal qualities and characteristics needed to give back and to make a positive change. He offered new messages and inspirations. And he also recounted a number of familiar stories because, he enjoyed sharing them. They were his favorites. And as such, they say the most about his legacy as he perceived it. I will be forever grateful for his irreplaceable time he so generously set aside for this book. Like everyone else who appreciated John Lewis, I was heartbroken when he passed in July of 2020. It felt shockingly sudden, despite my knowing how ill he was, because it was so hard to imagine our world without his magnificent, unrelenting example to light the way forward. We all wanted to be able to lean on his strength forever, of course. But, as a poet friend of mine observed, he gave us more than enough. We just have to live up to the lessons. This book is a treasure. I know I've said it about other books, but I mean it especially about this. I'm not going to read them all, but I just want to give you a little sampling. Each very brief section is entitled On Good Days, on Mentors, on Heroes, on Good Trouble, on Activism, on Justice, on Courage, on Character, on Humility, and on and on. The subjects that he felt we needed a new perspective on. And so, I love this one. On Mentors. Dr. Martin Luther King was my mentor. He, more than anyone else, helped make me the person I am today. Dr. King taught us that we must have love in our hearts for our fellow brothers and sisters. He taught us all so much about how to live through his actions and words. He freed and liberated blacks and whites and everyone from a culture of division into one of unity. If I could say something to Dr. King today, I would say, "Hello, Dr. King. How are you?" And then I would say, "Thank you. Thank you for all that you did for us to improve our country and our world for leading by example and showing us how to live with freedom and compassion, and how to die with conviction and grace. Oh, I would catch him up on this year 2020 especially and say, oh, look at the progress we've made, and look at the work we still have to do. We've been remembering your example and listening to your words. We can still hear you. I hear you every day. Young people today can look to people in their families and in their communities to find mentors. You don't have to have all the answers. You don't have to know everything. You already know in your heart what is right and good, what is decent, just, fair. If you want to grow, find someone who has walked the walk. A mentor is a sounding board who gives you direction and guidance, and who asks you questions for you to work out on your own. We all need mentors. We stand on the shoulders of those who came before us. The time will come when you will need to become a mentor to the next generation. Pass on what you've learned to those who are assuming the mantle. Pass the torch, because the fight never ends. I make every effort to write, teach, and advise those who are involved in the Black Lives Matter movement so they can learn about how we acted according to the dictates of our heart in the 1960s during the civil rights movement. We can all learn how to be nonviolent and take the high road. Oh, that takes work, training, guidance, and mentorship. Oh, it's always a good time to be with someone. Listen to someone without interrupting them, and then show them the way to respond to what's in their hearts. We must all develop the next generation because they are the stewards of the house of humanity, the global house. They will determine the course of freedom and justice for all. Find a mentor. Be a mentor. On courage. Courage reflects your spirit. It reflects something deep within all of us who would rather defy an authority than go along with something that is morally wrong. Raw courage makes us stand up, speak out in the face of fear. Courage helps us overcome doubts and reservations. It's not something that comes from reason or logic, but is born from the heart and the divine purpose to take the right path. As a child, I remember hearing the scripture, "Sorrow may endure for a night, but joy cometh in the morning." I whispered this to myself during the most harrowing moments of the movement. In May 1961, we Freedom Riders were locked in the First Baptist Church in Montgomery, Alabama, because there was an angry mob of men waiting outside the church who were brandishing baseball bats and lead pipes. We thought that we were going to die, right there. But that morning, President John F. Kennedy saved us when he federalized the Alabama National Guard. Federal marshals came to protect and guard us. The sorrow had been lifted, and we were able to keep marching toward a more just future. We believed that righteousness would always prevail in the end. We had to believe. There was no time for equivocating. The president demonstrated courage by protecting us. We didn't care what the political outcome would be. He didn't care if people disagreed. Courage can feel uncomfortable. Courage is not about being popular. It is about purpose. There may be a time when history calls upon you. There may be an injustice that has hurt your friends or fellow citizens. How will you respond? Will you support those who are oppressed? By listening to the voice within, you will find the courage and power to do what is right, even if it is unpopular at the time. This inner courage will command you to respond to fighting with peace and respond to hate with love. You may wonder why I chose that particular sequence to read to you. I want to remind you about something. This does hit close to home. The brother-in-law of a very close friend of mine, Ray Arsenault, wrote a book. Oh, he was graduated from the high school right here in Fernandina Beach. But he later wrote a book about the Freedom Riders. And that book became the serial that Ken Burns made into the PBS Freedom Riders program. So if you think living on a little island of paradise in the middle of somewhere, Florida, doesn't mean anything, hey, we impact on the world scene. What we do here makes a difference. On character, I think most humans are born with good character. You hear people speak of people with good seeds. When people come into the world, they're born with a sense of completeness and wholeness. And for the most part, people remain that way. I believe that most people are kind and decent. Oh, they have good character and can tell the difference between right and wrong. And they have the will to choose. This is what Dr. King understood when he shared his dream that day would come when we wouldn't be judged by the color of our skin, but by the content of our character. We all have free will. We can choose to be a force for truth and light. We can choose to have and to keep the strong character we were born with, to have strong mental and moral qualities. The choice is ours. On humility, whatever good work you do, whatever powerful, profound work, do it because it's right or because it's necessary. Do it to make change for the better Do it because you know you must. Don't do it for credit. Now, here's one of my very favorite John Lewis stories. And I wanted to share this with you again, even though in his autobiography, I did read a little bit of this passage, but this is a retelling in his own words toward the end of his journey of this story that I so love. And it's on faith. Faith is having complete trust and confidence in something or someone. Sometimes it means having trust in something you cannot see, touch, or feel. For that reason, faith can defy logic and reason. But that's even more reason to believe and keep the faith. Now, growing up in Alabama, I had faith that the world would eventually improve and become more equitable and just. Oh, I couldn't see it at the time, but I believed that it could and would happen. You know, there are some stories I like to tell because they shared how I was shaped, who I am, and I never want to forget them. One is growing up as the child of sharecroppers in rural Alabama. We considered everyone in our community to be like family. One weekend, about 15 of us children in the community were playing in my Aunt Seneva's yard, which was about half a mile from where I lived. What became as a sunny day turned into a dark one as the clouds gathered, turning the sky gray and moody. We heard the rumbling of thunder in the distance, and those sounds got closer and closer and louder. The flash of lightning startled us as the sky was illuminated with bolts. I had seen firsthand what lightning could do, turning forests into fires. I was afraid of thunderstorms, their sounds, and the havoc they brought to our community. My mother would hush us whenever there was a thunderstorm, saying the Lord was doing his work. Aunt Seneva gathered all of us children into her small house. We waited there, quietly listening to the rumblings, booms, and rolls outside. All of us children were afraid. And so was Aunt Seneva. The house began to rock from side to side. The floor beneath us started to buckle and arch, and then the roof above us started to lift. The storm was quite literally pulling the house up. Thinking quickly, Aunt Seneva told us all to hold hands, walk toward the corner of the room that was rising. Now, this had the effect of weighing down the area of the house and keeping it grounded. When another corner began to lift, we walked to that corner as one to use our weight as a countervailing force. Whenever the house was rocked, we had faith in each other that we could keep it under control, and that the higher power would protect us. We were walking with the wind. I think this is a metaphor for how we live in the world today. Whenever the house of America is rocked or roiled by a problem or injustice, we have to join together as one. Hold each other's hands, hold tight, and have faith that our collective and conscious action will secure this part of the house for the moment and for the future. There are always storms. We have to walk in their direction. You see, marching is an act of faith. You have to trust that others will join you, and those who see and hear about the march will be reminded of our values and ideals. When there is a problem facing our land, we walk with the wind to redeem the soul of America. When there is a storm, there are those who walk to it and those who walk away. When you walk in its direction, you are demonstrating a moral force and showing that you have faith that everything works out as it should and according to the will of the higher power. And the most frequent question I get is, how did you do it? After getting beaten up, bloodied, trampled upon, how did you not strike back or even try to defend yourself? How did you endure the death threats and abuses? My answer: faith. I had faith in my heart that the fate of the world had already been written, and that my brothers and sisters and I in the movement were there to help bring the dream to reality. We believed that the dream already existed, and we had to invite others to share in its conception and manifestation. We were so sure about our convictions that we believed they were whispered into our hearts and minds by a higher power. There's a reason that the movement began in the churches, and that the reverends and church goers were integral. We were all people of faith. We were members of a community that relied on each other. We were believers. We believed that humanity has a set of principles that are unshakable and unmovable. We believed that we are the children of the Lord. Therefore, any type of discrimination or segregation was irrational, illogical. Why should children be divided? We are one. No matter how far we as a people or society stray from our moral compass, humans always have the capacity to return to our values. Our country has founding documents that enshrine our principles as life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Oh, it's there, in black and white. Yes, in black and white. The very writing of these words sealed the country's fate, that it would be a beacon for those in search of a better way of life. We in the movement had faith that Americans would want to live in keeping with their principles and not in conflict with them. As difficult as it may seem today, with the killings of young black people by the police, we have to keep faith that things will work out as they should, and in keeping with our principles and values. Oh, that doesn't mean you should sit idly and watch events unfold. No. We must all be on the front lines, getting into good and necessary trouble. But when change doesn't happen in one day or in 1 year, we can't lose faith that the day will come. Faith is inherent and intrinsic. It is what has given me peace, tranquility, and confidence, even in the darkest and dimmest moments of my life. Now, to change course, but not really. I'm going to go to the Mule Creek Post. Now, the Mule Creek Post is a communication arm, that's French for newspaper, of the Mule Creek Prison in California. And I'm currently reading a book that was written by the editor of the Mule Creek Post, and I was sent one of the copies of the newspaper, and I read through it, and I found something that was just so arresting. And it's called Broken by Mark Daigre, who is a Post columnist, in a section called View from a Cushion. And it goes, there is an art form in Japan called kintsugi. In kintsugi, pieces of precious pottery have been broken for one reason or another and put back together using pitch coated with gold dust. This creates an item with greater beauty and enhanced value than the original unbroken piece. Kintsugi is centuries old and is practiced to this day. It is believed that some artisans purposefully break perfectly good pieces of pottery just to put them back together. Also, there is a belief that a learning curve does not exist for this art form. One is simply born knowing how to create these beautiful pieces of art without any practice at all. People are much the same. Nobody, and this bears repeating, nobody is allowed to live a life without struggle and damage. The key to being successful is how the damage is repaired. In the hands of the inexperienced, the repair can create more harm. But with patience, practice, and an openness to allow things to be as they are, true healing and beauty can happen. While this may seem an impossible task, in reality it's quite simple. Now take, for example, the process of writing music. In the documentary Sound City, Dave Grohl plays a song with Sir Paul McCartney. As they trade riffs back and forth, Grohl asks, "Why can't it always be this easy?" McCartney responds, "It is. The reality is that it's just that easy. Get out of your own way. Don't decide something has to fit the specific way. Allow things to be mismatched. Let the wholeness come as it will. You cannot force any part of your personal recovery, just as you cannot force any part of a song to be written. Oh, sure, words and notes can be decided on and kept, but if they don't work where they are, do you keep them in that order, if at all? Oh, I would hope not. As humans, we constantly confuse and conflate and complicate things, making a simple process very busy and difficult. Often the secret is to get out of the way and let the process be the process. Claiming something won't work because, you know it won't, is selling yourself short. How often have you felt uncomfortable with a practice or exercise in a recovery group, and after trying it, found it to be not only helpful, but also somehow foundational to your path of recovery? Now here's something about pitch. It is malleable, Amber, the fossilized resin found across the globe, is actually pine sap or pitch that is hardened to near crystalline clarity. But if one holds a flame to a 1,000,000-year-old piece of amber, it burns like sap from a pine tree. So, not only is your piece of ceramic repaired, more beautiful and somehow better than before, it is also able to flex a bit where before it could not. And if it is a cup or a bowl, it is now a bit larger than the original and can hold more than before. No matter how broken you think you are, no matter the size and number of pieces, you can be put back together in a way both beautiful and useful to yourself, to those you love, and to the world. This essay was written by an inmate in the California prison system. I hope I've given you a few things to mull over the weekend. And we'll be coming to other thoughts on other Fridays. Till then, celebrate the day and enjoy your weekend.